There are some fears which are pretty universal. Public speaking, having to move, a fear of heights, or of something slithery like snakes and alligators. But what about when we fear something that's supposed to be joyous? Like, for example, the best day of our lives? Yes, I'm talking about a wedding. And while there's so much to look forward to when it comes to the big day, the anxiety about who'll be there is real, especially when it's your divorced parents. Joe Alarcón is facing that anxiety this year as he gets ready to marry, a moment where his parents will be in the same room together for the first time in over a decade. I'm Rebecca, and today we talk to Joe Alarcón and his brother Joshua on the bond they built as children raised by their father and the ways they plan to support each other on Joe's wedding day. This is En Confianza. Welcome, Joe and Josh, to En Confianza. We're so happy to have you all here. And the first question we ask all of our guests is, what was the last time you told someone in confianza?
Honestly, pretty recently, with my fiance, her and I, we have pretty open conversations. So I would say mine was probably like 2 weeks ago, maybe.
Are you going to tell us what you said, Joe?
I'm sure we'll probably get into it today.
Love that teaser. What about you, Josh?
So like Joe said, we definitely will dive deep into what that means. But Joe is definitely like my safety person. I tell Joe everything that I can in confianza. I feel comfortable telling Joe anything. I look up to him like a father figure, honestly.
Oh, I love that. How much older than you is Joe?
Joe is 5 years older than I am. Yes.
Well, now we got to pass it to you, Joe. What has Josh taught you? He says you're his father figure.
Well, Josh also teaches me a lot too, because I'm a people pleaser. And I hadn't known that for like majority of my life, that I would I'm a type of person who really just kind of sits off to the side and doesn't want to create conflict and just wants to keep the peace at all times. And he is definitely not that at all. So he's kind of brought it out of me in a way to kind of, I guess in a way, stand up for myself, but also just speak my mind and be more vocal, I would say as well.
So you're a recovering people pleaser, I hear, Joe.
It's been a long time recovery, yeah.
We're on the journey to recovery. What else has Josh taught you about the sibling relationship and being there for each other? Because he says that you're like his father figure. I'm curious, is that a role that you took on consciously, that he asked of you?
Honestly, no, he never really asked. I think it just happened. I don't know. I feel like that way with all my siblings. Pretty much all my siblings say that I'm like the father of the group, and they were like, then there's times where they don't tell me anything in confianza because they think of me as like a father for some reason. I don't know why, but but I think it's just having that dynamic of just like caring for somebody and just being there for somebody is definitely something, again, that Josh has kind of like taught me, and like all my other siblings have kind of taught me.
And what about you, Josh? What has Joe taught you? You see him as a father figure, but what are some examples of those lessons that you take with you?
So I like to say that I have kind of entered my young adult era very independently, but at the same time, I see myself that way because I've been taught to be responsible, be independent without even realizing it. And Joe plays a huge role for that in me. I look up to Joe. It's like someone I want to be and someone I aspire. So it's really nice to have someone like that, especially a sibling.
Yeah, you all are sibling goals. Like, I want to be. Actually, I am an honorary sibling because my last name is also Alarcón. So we're I'm sure like seventh cousins, y'all. So
somewhere down the line,
we're somewhere down the line for sure. I'm gonna call myself the fourth Alarcón sibling. Is it? You all are three.
Our dynamic's a little strange. We have an older brother from my dad's side, and then we have two younger siblings from my mom's side. So we're like the only full siblings.
Yeah.
So we're the Alarcón brothers, but there's more.
Well, I fit right in the family, you all, because I have 3 half-sisters who are all Alarcóns. So it's 4 of us from our dad's side, but I am the only child from mom and dad. So it sounds like this is the right adoptive sibling family for me. I am fully an Alarcón sibling. I love it.
I love it.
So, Joe, you have a big family moment coming up.
Yes.
As we were preparing for this conversation, and as we see Josh nodding here, you're preparing for your wedding.
Yeah, a little less than a year now.
Josh, do you have any official role in the wedding?
Yeah, so fun fact, I have never been to a wedding, and I am actually the best man of the wedding.
I have planned a wedding myself, my own. It's almost 10 years ago now, so it's a distant memory, but it is just so much work. So I hope that you all are enjoying the process while you, of course, manage all of that stress. And one of the things that I'm remembering, Joe, that I'm sure you can relate to is all of the family dynamics that come up.
There's a lot of dynamics. One in particular is definitely just my parents in general, because my parents did have a kind of a nasty divorce. It's been lingering on for like almost 20 years now. It's just a weird dynamic that I've been uncomfortable with for a good portion of my life, and it's not something that I've really thought about up until after the engagement. I'm like, oh dang, now I really just need to figure out what the heck I want to do here.
And when you are thinking about the awkwardness or what you've been avoiding, is it having them in the same room? Is it your relationship with them? Tell us more around what is making you anxious when you think of having them together at your wedding.
I wouldn't say it's my relationship with them, because I have a good relationship with both of my parents. I think the stress really comes out to just having both of them in the same room together at the same time. Oh my gosh. It's been like 13 years. So just having them in that same room is just the main stress, I'd say. It's more stressful than the wedding itself to me, to be honest.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of burden to carry. As I'm thinking of what you all are sharing and this dynamic with your parents, you know, it is very curious to me to learn that you all were raised by your dad, that you moved to Michigan to live with him. Mostly when we think of kids of divorced parents, in my case, I am a child of divorced parents. It just wasn't even a question that I was going to go live with my mom. I think especially in Latino culture, that's expected, right? What was different about growing up with your dad as compared to other kids in you all's life growing up? Was it different? Were you the only ones?
I'm going to be completely honest. It was not easy. It's always the stereotypical, like, if your parents are divorced, you go with your mother. And it was always a little confusing, especially like in elementary school, even like little comments such as like, make sure your mom signs this piece of paper. For me personally, it would kind of break my heart sometimes, just because it would have to be like, oh, I'll make sure my dad signs it.
I do remember like when you mentioning that was such a big thing, and it wasn't even just in school, but it was just everywhere. Like TV shows, you would see like all the TV shows, they would always do a Mother's Day, but they never did a Father's Day episode.
I know, that's so true. Father's Day has become bigger, I think, since we've been older.
Agreed,
but I don't even really remember Father's Day growing up either. You're so right.
Yeah, and I think it really was different. In my upbringing, I think there was probably a lot missing from like that a mother could provide, such as like the nurturing aspect and things like that. Something that you just kind of are embedded with your mom. Because my dad is honestly, he's like the typical like macho man. My dad did do his best in any way he could. Like if it was something that we felt either isolated or anything like that, he would go out of his way to try making us feel better and comforting us and whatnot. It was something that was just different. I can just tell just by speaking with people about their upbringings and whatnot, even people who are of divorced parents and were raised with their mother, it is different.
What do you think you gained the most from being raised by your dad? Or some of the most positive examples that he set for you, or best memories from growing up with him?
My dad was so involved in as much as he could in our lives, whether that was just keeping up on our academics, keeping up on us in regards to extracurriculars, like putting us in sports and martial arts and stuff like that, just trying to keep us busy. I can never discredit how involved he was, especially with how limited time he did have. He revolved all of his non-work life around us, and that's something that I am so grateful for. What would you say, Josh?
I also want to mention that my dad has sacrificed a lot of his own mental health just to make sure that me and my brother are okay. My favorite memory growing up with my dad was being in elementary school, and this was when I was in Orlando. Our lunchroom was like outside, like outdoors. And my dad on Fridays would come and bring me lunch from like a fast food place and just eat lunch with me while I'm at school. It was just like something I looked forward to every Friday growing up and being in elementary school. I feel like I appreciate those moments, but looking in the past, I didn't appreciate it when I was younger, but I definitely appreciate all those moments that I've had with him.
And now I have to ask you all what you mourn about not being raised with your mom.
I'd say growing up, my relationship wasn't nearly as strong with my mom. It definitely was something that I had to kind of grow to learn, because we really didn't see her that frequently, every other weekend kind of thing. And then by the time we started doing those, my sister was already born, and then eventually my brother was already born. I think subconsciously I got a little envious because I really wasn't like, I don't know, like, I guess I wasn't like a focal point in a way.
Did you feel replaced?
I get maybe subconsciously. I think I've kind of been working through that recently, where I feel as though that was something that was present that I just never really looked into.
Addressed. Yeah.
But that never made me, I'd say, resentful towards my siblings, because like I love my siblings, all of them to no end. Maybe it built some resentment for me towards my mom in a way. We just didn't see her that frequently, and then when we did, it was like 2 days, and then like, okay, then see you again in 2 weeks kind of thing. So it was a strange relationship growing up. But I think now as an adult, my relationship with my mom is in a much better state than when it was.
And you, Josh?
Since we moved to Michigan, I had more free time over the summer to go visit my mom back in Florida while Joe stayed in Michigan sometimes. So I would every summer go visit my mom and go see my family down in Florida. And we had that vulnerability. We had conversations, open conversations about everything. And I remember one day that we were kind of just watching like old videotapes of our like family, and a videotape of my mom visiting me and my brother came up, and my mom and I started crying, but my siblings had no idea why we were crying. And it was kind of just like that connection of like,
only you two understood what it meant to see that.
Exactly. So it was definitely tough not having my mom growing up, but honestly, I don't know if I would change it, because I have a really strong relationship with both of my parents in a way that I don't know if I would have had that if they were together.
You have this anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen. But if we sit here and visualize the moment of that big day and your parents reuniting after 11 years, what are your predictions of what's going to go down?
I guess worst case scenario, then there's random argument and things get blown out of proportion and whatnot, and then it causes a scene. But I'm really hoping that's not the case. I think I can probably at least do my best to try limiting that, just by preparing everything beforehand, way beforehand.
What will preparing beforehand look like?
I think honestly just sitting each of my parents one-on-one, just having the conversation with like, hey, like, just for one day, please, like, honestly, don't even look at each other.
What about you, Josh?
I think I want to play more than just the best man in the wedding, just because it's like, I just want to make sure that he has his peace, and I care about that. And I don't want him to be stressed out, like we've been speaking about our parents being in the same room. I don't want him to be the stressor of the night for him. I want him to enjoy. It's his night. Everyone is there for him and his fiance. So if there's any stress, I'm okay with taking it for the night. Like, I will take the stress. But
That is a very sweet brotherly role to take on this very special evening. And you have about a year, Josh, to prepare to give some
I do.
awesome best man advice, to, give a good pep talk, to get ready. I have faith that that day is just going to be magical and special. So I will send you all those good vibes over the next year so that it goes smoothly. Joe, I want to go back to you and ask if you ever felt the responsibility to be that father figure that Josh sees you as when you all were growing up.
I think I just subconsciously took that role, but I think I did almost in a way, because even from the beginning, I always felt like, if anything, like I always have my brother. And so I think from that point on is kind of where I just thought of myself as kind of, it sounds cheesy, but I guess a protector, where I just wanted to like care for my brother and make sure that he's good, and kind of like I'll take the brunt of things as long as like I can alleviate that for him, kind of thing. Who knows, maybe that's probably why all my siblings now just call me the father. So I think it's just embedded in me, and that's just who I am.
Is there a particular conversation or moment that you all can share with us around showing that bond? Or was there a moment that you remember that just really made that bond stronger, or an experience or a happy memory that can illustrate for our audience
Well,
that closeness that you're talking
I would
about?
like to say that this was like a happy moment, but it's not. My parents were just having a really bad argument, and this was happening while my brother and we were in my room. And so the way that our house was set up was that like our room, well, my room and his room, we were kind of off on one side of the house, and then there was a long hallway that broke up like a dining room, the kitchen, and then there was like the living room, and then my parents' room over there on that side. And so they were having their argument over there. And I remember that while we were playing and everything, and I went out just to see what was going on because I was concerned. I didn't know what was going on. And then I just saw my parents having this really bad argument, and I immediately went into like scared / like protection mode, where I just like ran right back into my room, and I was just trying to protect my brother because he was oblivious. He had no idea, and he was so young at the time too, where he honestly wouldn't have even puzzle pieced anything together. And I just closed the door and I locked it, and then he was like, "Oh, what's going on?" Because he saw that I was freaking out and I was like crying and everything. And I was like, "Oh, well," I just like made up some lie. I said that like my t-shirt was burned, so like while they were ironing it or something like that. And then I think from that point on, kind of just became almost like a situation where I just felt like I needed to like be there for my brother. And I mean, I'm pretty sure we've had this conversation before, haven't we? Like, and I think that's probably what has tied us together like so closely, because we have like these shared experiences that are so unique that the only person that understands his perspective is me, and the only person that understands my perspective is him. And I think that is something that's really special, and has probably been a great reason as to why we have the bond that we do. But within the past few years, I was just kind of like on a journey of like self-discovery, where I wanted to learn more about myself and why I am the way I am. So that's when I started getting into therapy, and I was having these conversations, and then in my head, I was thinking like, oh, like I've been pushing away the emotions for so long that I was just thought that it was no big deal or whatever. And then just mid conversation, I just break down and I just start crying. And then that's when I was like, okay, this stuff is like it's actually worth looking into and wondering like, why is that the case? And who knows? It might be like a Latino male thing that like, you just don't talk about stuff. You don't go into therapy. It makes you weak and whatnot and all that stuff. But And I too also had that same sentiment and thought process, just because, again, that's just the way I was raised.
You were talking, Joe, just now around, the stigma, the stereotype. This is for both of you all. What do you want people to know about divorce? And what do you want people to know that they may not about being raised by their fathers or by a father?
I would say, especially for my Latino listeners, it's your fathers, they're going to be stubborn. Love him to death, but my dad is very stubborn. And I've come to notice that the best way to get through to him is through just calm conversations rather than blowing things up. That's the thing, because my dad's kind of like Taylor Swift. He has different eras. He has he has those moments where he's like just a calm, cool, collective dad. Then he also has those moments where he's like a really sentimental dad, and then he has those moments where he's like coach dad. I think my dad also knows this, that I'm the person he has the calm conversations with, and Josh is the person that brings stuff up controversially. So we both get through to him, but for me, I think the slow burner kind of conversations work the best, for me at least. But that would just be maybe a piece of advice I would add.
That is just something I needed to hear today, Joe. That is something I think we all can take back as we try to improve the bonds with the people we love. So I'm gonna take that with me and try to do better to apply it in my own life, because depending on the day, I got more of the Josh Alarcón side of me or the Joe Alarcón side of my own Alarcónness. So I'm gonna take that slow burn advice. Joe, what's your best Josh impression? Josh, what's your best Joe impression?
I'm trying to think of the perfect one.
I have an impression of Josh because Josh is currently a student, because he's been studying speech pathology for the past few years. Based off of the way that you pronounce a word, he will try correcting that with whatever he's learning in school at the time. And then he goes, okay, I learned that because I'm in this class and this is what I've been doing for this long and this and that. And I think that's probably, and he's like, it's like, okay, I knew all that. Thanks for telling me that
I know,
you're a student.
man. All right, a Joe impression. You got this, Josh.
The first thing that just comes up to my head is probably the fourth reminder to send him money for my insurance that I haven't paid him yet. It's like, oh, by the way, like that $100 sounds really nice, by the way. And I'm just, it's those texts. It's I'll get one tomorrow. And then a few days after, I was like, oh, by the way.
True Big Brother fashion.